I'll just introduce the gang here. So we have Gary on your right or left. Which way would it be? Put your hand up, Gary.
Hi, Gary.
Kieran.
John?
Kieran.
Oh, Kieran.
So that's Shane.
Shane. Pleased to meet you, Shane. What is this up near the ceiling here? What is that? No, Shane, look out!
That's you.
What the hell is it? Oh! It's a Borg! I thought it was getting warm in here.
Right, well, we're actually just really fascinated with your story, because as fanboys, just seeing how you got your start, I mean, you're the ultimate sort of a personification of bringing fandom into a career.
You know, I really am. I have to. No kidding. I really am. I mean, I always was a huge, before the word geek meant anything, except a guy who bit the heads off of chickens at the carnival. You know, that was a geek. I mean from the point where I was a little kid, I was reading science fiction constantly, and I watched the original Star Trek series first run in black and white. You know, that's an interesting thing to do. The original Star Trek was shot by Jerry Finnerman to look good in black and white or color, because only half of the United States had color television sets at the time, so they had to look at the show in black and white and make sure that it punched in black and white, and then color was almost secondary. And after that, once everyone had a color TV, the DPs stopped worrying about that. They just shot strictly for color.
Did you start a Star Trek store?
Yeah. The Star Trek, it was the Federation Trading Post, and it was on 53rd and 3rd in Manhattan, which is some pretty pricey real estate. I have no idea how we did it. I do know that the first month we were open, it was dead. No one was coming in, and the local merchants had been laughing at us from the very beginning. You know, oh, that place is going to be gone before you know it. And we actually saved up enough money to run a 15-second ad during Star Trek on one of the local stations. It was just a slide. And the next day there was like a line around the block. And I mean, that line stayed there for at least a year. It was absolutely incredible. And that was about the same time the convention started as well.
I always hear about basically two avenues for you. Is that Dick Smith took notice of you, and that's what brought you into the makeup world. But then I also hear about you sneaking onto the set of the motion picture and getting to know people that way.
Makeup or anything.
Right,
yeah, that was
well
around
before
the Federation Trading Post time. It was it was quite early. Yeah, me and Jeff Mandel decided that we had to sneak on the Paramount backlot. We actually flew out to L.A. and looked for holes in the wall to try to sneak into the backlot. Little did I know that I would be on that lot working for like 17 years. But we even tried to get in through there's a Hollywood Forever cemetery behind the studio, and we even tried to get in through there. Couldn't find anything. But we basically BS'd our way onto the lot. We called Howard Anderson, who did the visual effects for the original series, had their stage on the Paramount backlot at the time. And literally, I called up Howard Anderson, and I said, we were fans of Howard Anderson. Could we come in and, say hi and take a look? And they said, sure.
What was your background at that stage, Doug? What was your skill set? Like, what had you done previously? Was it just
at the point where
you got your foot in the door?
Well, I mean, do you mean that when I got my first job, or when I was sneaking onto backlots? I was always a sketcher. I always sketched, and I figured that's what I was going to be doing. I spent a lot of time drawing, but was not, we had the Federation Trading Post, but that was about it. I mean, I hadn't broken into publishing or anything like that yet. But there were fanzines at the time. And we sold fanzines at the Federation Trading Post. And, I think back on it now, and fanzines are kind of like the internet of their day. It was where fans would do their own Star Trek magazine, mimeographed, crummy, stapled together, where they'd write their own stories, or they would share they would share information on, I made my own little 8mm Star Trek movie, and this is how I did that. And there was a fan magazine. It was a pretty slick one, and it ended up becoming an actual magazine. Cinemagic was like it was just a fan magazine. And I had been collecting articles on effects, and because I love that stuff. And I had an article on how to make molds and run foam latex, and the guy had step-by-step stuff in it. And I did like probably everybody did back then. My first makeup was a Planet of the Apes makeup. Discovering that I could sculpt and that I was interested in this, it was kind of like Popeye down in a can of spinach all of a sudden, you know. I like had this power. It was like flame on, you know. But once I did that, though, I have to admit, I became, and I do this a lot, when I get into something, I get totally hooked, and I can't put it down. And I was making molds on everything, man. I would have made a mold on the cat if the cat stood still. I was in makeup, you know, for like 11, 12 years. I did makeup. And we were working out of Brooklyn, New York. And we were close to Dick Smith. Dick was up in Larchmont, and so we had a lab in Brooklyn. And Dick used to feed us jobs, and he taught us. I mean, I worked with him on a couple of films. On Starman, I worked with him, and I was on The Hunger, the Tony Scott film, the vampire film with David Bowie and Catherine Deneuve. So we were working out of New York, and I knew that when I heard about the news of a new Star Trek series, of course, I was losing my mind, you know. And my partner, John Caglione, he's saying, and, you know, Gene Roddenberry was back, and Bob Justman was back, and John says to me, he goes, you know, you're a working professional. Why don't you just call Paramount and say you want to talk to Bob Justman? And I went, hey, yeah. I can do that if I want. And I literally got on the phone and called Paramount and said, in my most adult voice that I could muster, yes, this is Doug Drexler calling. I'd like to speak to Bob Justman in the Star Trek production office. And they said, 1 moment. And it was like 30 seconds later, I had Bob Justman on the telephone, just like that. And we struck up a friendship. And there was no internet yet, so we couldn't email or anything. But I, you know, sent letters and stuff, and we chatted once in a while. And I remember when the show premiered, I sent a case of champagne to the set. But so I was friends with Bob, and Bob actually invited me out. And I went out twice. The first time I went out, there were no sets or anything like that. And Bob kept me with him during the day and took me to meetings with ILM where they had footage of the ship. No one had ever seen it before. You know, there was a great shot in the title sequence of Next Generation where the Enterprise comes up underneath the camera, and you could see a little guy walking across in the conference room, and then it's rubber bands to warp, like that.
Oh, yeah.
I saw that shot, and I saw the little guy walk across the conference room, and it was like blowing my mind. And Bob was so excited that I noticed that because that was his idea, and it gave such scope. You believe that there were people in there. The funny thing is that many years later, when they were doing the remastering of Next Generation, I worked on 1 season of that. And
which season was that?
I'm sorry? What season? Was it? I can't remember if it was the first or second season.
Okay.
I think it was the second season. I think it was the second season. Dan Curry, who was a supervisor on Next Generation, they actually got him to work on the show, on the remasters. And, you know, Dan and I are real good friends and work together. And he asked me if I had time to come and be on that for a little while. I was only there for the 1 season, not even the whole season. But the thing was that they were digging up lots of stuff that no one had ever seen before in the archives at Paramount. I mean, they really had a lot as far as Next Generation. You know, original series, no one expected anything to happen with that. That was like a 3-year show, and it was canceled, and they really didn't save anything. You know, the original footage for visual effects is all gone, you know. But Next Generation, wow, they kept literally everything. It was absolutely astonishing that they still had all the, visual effects passes on the ships in layers, so that we were able to take those and put them in a compositing program and recomposite them and not have to reinvent them, you know. But the thing I'm getting at is the little guy walking across the conference room is we found the it was on 8.5 by 11 paper, I guess, where someone drew. It was literally drawn by hand with a table and a guy that walks across, and really crude. I mean, really crude. You couldn't believe how crude it was. But you know something? When it's that big on the screen, it doesn't matter. All that matters is the motion. Your brain fills in the rest of it. I mean, I saw a guy.
You must have been one of the last people to really be able to make out that guy walking by that window properly when you saw that test footage, because when I was watching that show as a kid, because just the standard definition on TV,
Well, yeah.
I could never make him out. It wasn't until I saw the Blu-ray trailer I finally, you can see people walking through there.
Well, you know, the thing is that I saw it on a movie screen when I first saw it.
Yeah.
So it was easy to see it. And then after that, I knew it was there, you know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was, so I got to know Bob. And I came out one more time when the sets were built. They were shooting Encounter at Farpoint. And I was in New York, and believe it or not, there's a New York makeup union and an LA makeup union. And you can't just come from New York and work on they either have to get a waiver for you or they make you take a test. When Dick Smith went to Los Angeles, he was working on a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. And they needed pull-over rubber stunt masks for someone. And they made Dick Smith take his makeup test. Dick Smith! I mean, me, I understand, but Dick Smith, he's like a makeup god, you know. You know, Bob and I talked about the possibility of doing makeup, and he knew that it was almost impossible unless I could find a way into the union. And they got Mike Westmore to do the makeup. And of course, Mike is like one of my dear friends now. I met Mike the first time when I came out and they were shooting Encounter at Farpoint. And they had a little makeup like shack on the stage behind stage 9. And that's where I met Mike. And actually, not too long after that, I'd be in that same room working with him. And we had a great time doing that. But so, you know, I left knowing there was probably almost no way that I would get to work on Star Trek because of that. My partner and I talked about, you know, trying to break into the Los Angeles scene, but we didn't want to go out to LA like hunting for a job. We decided that we would wait till a job came to us. That's pretty, I think about it now, it's like, who do you guys think you are anyway? But one day we were in the lab. We had a terrific lab in Brooklyn. And I was reading in the trades that Warren Beatty was going to do Dick Tracy. And I remember looking at John, and we looked at each other, we said, you know, whoever gets that job is going to get the statue, you know, the Academy Award. Because we knew that Tracy was all about crazy characters and faces. I mean, you know, Bob Kane, who did Batman, was inspired by Dick Tracy, you know, Half and Half and, you know, Two-Face or whatever. And all those characters were because he was so impressed with Dick Tracy. You know, Bob Kane actually came into our lab when we were out in L.A. He came in because we were doing Dick Tracy. He wanted to meet us. And I remember some kids came in and he was drawing Batman for them. And I said, you know, you've been drawing Batman for so long, I bet you could draw Batman with your eyes closed. And he goes, let's see. And he closes his eyes, gets a piece of paper, and does a pretty damn good Batman with his eyes closed. Of course, that got thrown on the table. No one wanted that. And after everyone was gone, I look over, and there's the piece of paper of Batman drawn by Bob Kane with his eyes closed. I took that thing and put that in the plastic sleeve with the pencil he did it with, and that's a one-of-a-kind, boy, and I've got that in a box. I remember when Dick Smith, we were up at Dick's house, and Dick was flabbergasted that we got the job. And he said, well, you know, you may do the lab work. He says, but I guarantee you'll never pick up a brush on stage, ever. Howard Smith, head of the union, he'll never allow it. Guys can just forget about that. Well, he wasn't counting on Warren Beatty, who carried a lot of weight, and that Warren hadn't decided if it was going to be a union picture or not yet. And, of course, the unions wanted Dick Tracy. It was big news in town at the time, and the unions wanted that picture. And so Warren said, okay, I think I'm going to do a union picture. I think it's going to be union, but here's what I want. And one of the things on his list was that John and I get into the union.
Oh,
The union said they still have to take their test, but they're in. And I remember not only did they allow us to come into the union, but Howard Smith, the guy that Dick Smith said would never allow us to lift the brush on stage, drove our applications personally out to the lab and handed them to us with a big smile on his face. So Dick Smith's pretty cool, but he doesn't know everything.
And Doug,
So
can I just say, your work on Dick Tracy, kind of a big part of my childhood, actually. My first movie I ever went to see in the cinema, in a cinema called the Adelphi in my hometown of Dundalk, was Dick Tracy. I was 5 going on 6. And
Oh
the
my God,
makeup
that means it
scared,
maybe helped to warp you a little?
it scared,
helped warp you?
scared the crap out of me. The makeup, the
That's good.
flat head on William Forsythe and everything.
Oh, hey, William Forsythe was scary in real life. He was like a streetwise punk.
Really?
And he had a real attitude. I mean, as a matter of fact, he almost got fired off the job because he created a fuss everywhere he went. He made the girls in the wardrobe truck cry and stuff like that. And I remember John Landau came to us and said, "Can you put somebody else in that makeup?" And we're thinking, they're thinking about replacing him. And we said, "Absolutely not. It's custom made for him. You can't." I mean, we saved his job, I think. But I remember the first time he came in, we had already created the makeup for him, and we were going to do a makeup test on the Universal backlot. And he came in with his entourage, and he was being a real smart-ass with us. And, we're like guys from New York, too, And I remember as he was leaving, I said to him, laugh it up while you can, because tomorrow your ass belongs to us. And the smile just ran off of his face because he realized that he was our prisoner. And that's the thing about being a makeup artist. I mean, literally, if you're an actor, you have to kind of decide who your makeup artist is. Usually, in the beginning, they hate you. It's like Stockholm syndrome, where people are. It's exactly what it's like. I'm not kidding, because they hate your guts at first because they're coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're wiping them down with alcohol, cold alcohol, and putting sticky glue on them, and basically it's putting brushes up their nose and stuff, and they see you as the enemy. And then after a while, because psychologically they have to do this to survive, they start to feel like you're their mommy, You're wiping their nose, you're making sure there's nothing on their face, and pretty soon it becomes a warm feeling, and they actually fall in love with their makeup artist. I've seen it happen so many times, and it's so strange, and it really is like Stockholm syndrome. It's just what it's like. And we were his enemy in the very beginning. And I remember he came in, and he had long hair down to his shoulders, and Flat Top had an entire rubber head. We had to put a ball cap on him and stuff. And we said, "Bill, I mean, is there any chance that you would get a haircut?" And he says, Would that make it easier for you? And we said, "Yeah, absolutely." He said, "Well, then go fuck yourself." Get a haircut.
Point, you're an Oscar winner, but there's something still burning in you in there. It's just like, I want to be on Star Trek.
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
so what's the next move there?
It's like the salmon swimming upstream, It's like birds flying south. I mean, it was everything I ever wanted to do was work on Star Trek, especially a Star Trek that was started by Gene Roddenberry and Bob Justman. Those guys, to me, as a kid, when the original series was on, and then The Making of Star Trek came out in 1967 or something like that. And the thing about the book, The Making of Star Trek, is that it made the people behind the scenes into stars for me. As a 13-year-old kid, I was reading call sheets and reading production memos, and I remember reading memos from Bob Justman and Gene Roddenberry and stuff like that. And now they're doing Star Trek again, and I would literally kill. And I remember visiting a few times while we were still on Tracy. And then as soon as Dick Tracy was over, I went over to, Mike Westmore, and I literally begged to come work on Star Trek. And he was like, "Why? You're doing features and stuff like that." And I'm going, "No, man, it's all about Star Trek. I have to be. I have to. And he let me. And luckily, the thing was that Mike Westmore is, a dear, dear man who I just love. And not only that, if you know much about Hollywood makeup, you know that the Westmores literally invented it. But just to, meet a Westmore was exciting. And then, Mike just ended up being one of my great friends.
You already had your Next Generation uniform at that stage, though, Doug, had you?
Oh, hell yeah. I went to, before I actually went to work on Next Generation, I went to one of the early San Diego Comic-Cons. And they had uniforms that were not too bad, actually. And I bought one. And I still have a picture of me in it. Although I thought the zipper was supposed to be in the back. I had the uniform on backwards. Because we hadn't seen enough of the show yet to really know the details. Yeah, I definitely had one. I actually cameoed on Next Generation.
Yes, Transfigurations.
Transfigurations, yeah, that was a big thrill for me. And Bob Blackman, Bob Blackman, the wardrobe guy, he knew what a geek I was for the show. And I remember when I was in the wardrobe department getting fitted, they were putting my uniform on. I'm standing there in my uniform, and Bob comes in, and he looks at me, and he just shakes his head, walks over, and puts his arms around me and goes, "The dream comes true." At a certain point, I jumped from the makeup department to the art department. I got to know Mike Okuda. I was a sketcher, and I asked Mike one day, I ran into him on stage when I was doing makeup, and I said, "Mike, what's the chance? Is there any chance of me getting into the art department?" And I remember he looks around, and he grabs me by the arm and drags me down the hall of the Enterprise D to those big doors, like the holodeck doors, pulls those things open, and inside there is the hangar deck with a shuttle sitting in it. And the thing about those sets that's so wonderful is that it's all enclosed. On the original series, the tops of all the sets were open so they could shine lights, but they don't need that kind of lighting anymore. And they would build the ceilings into everything. And so when you're on the ship, you feel like you're in the ship. So when he drags me down the hallway and opens the doors and go into the hangar, and it was that shuttle where the door came down in the back, and it was complete on the inside. You could walk down the corridor, open those doors, walk into the hangar bay, walk up into the shuttle and sit in the pilot and co-pilot seat, look out the window and see the shuttle bay. So it's like, holy shit. So Mike took me off into the shuttle where we could talk fan stuff without being overheard by anyone. And so we're talking back and forth in the shuttle, and I'm thinking, Mike, this is like right out of 2001 where they're hiding from Hal. It was our 2001 moment. Exactly. I could just see the camera going from one set of lips to the next set of lips to the next set of lips.